Welcome back to another episode of Christian Natural Health. Today, I am very pleased to have Dr. Jacob Lieberman with us. Dr. Lieberman is a pioneer in the fields of light, vision, and consciousness, and the author of several books, including Take Off Your Glasses and See, the one that I just finished reading myself. Originally trained as an optometrist and vision scientist, his life changed in 1976 after the miraculous healing of his own eyesight, leading him to a deeper understanding of light and the science of life. Having helped countless individuals recover their eyesight, he began to understand the words of Jonathan Swift: real vision is the ability to see the invisible. Welcome, Dr. Lieberman. Thank you so much for joining us.
Lauren, please call me Jacob.
I will. Okay.
And I am touched to be here with you. For me in Maui, it's just 8 o'clock in the morning. And so I get a chance to start my day with your smiling face. I don't know anything that could be better than that.
Fantastic. Very cool. So I'm curious your original story. So 1976, you had the miraculous healing of your own vision. Tell us how that occurred.
Um, I was doing my medical training between 69 and 73. I graduated in 73.
Mm-hmm.
And my practice was never a general optometric practice.
Okay.
My practice was a referral practice where I dealt with issues that other practitioners couldn't deal with or didn't want to deal with. And
Interesting.
one of the things that I spent a lot of time is working with thousands of children
Mhm.
who were labeled as having some sort of learning, behavioral, or reading difficulties.
Okay.
And so I had to develop ways of helping them
Mhm.
to experience their maximum potential.
Mhm.
And I had to do it in such a way that not only they discovered something they never considered, but hopefully over time, the labeling would begin to disintegrate because, as I said to physicians for years, it's not the disease that kills you, it's the diagnosis.
Yeah, there's a lot to that. Yeah.
And so the moment we label something, we may be able to eradicate it from the body,
Hmm.
but it is very, very difficult to eradicate it from the mind
For sure.
because we have been conditioned about the mind in such a way that we've lost touch with what's truly seeing and guiding us. We
Uh-huh.
think as this little chattering device that we hear and that we speak of in the head, but it's actually not that.
Hmm.
And so for me, I noticed something very profound because I was one of those kids.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and I also tried very hard as they tried very hard. And I realized it wasn't because of a lack of interest or a lack of effort. I had to examine, were we conditioned um, to use effort or thinking ahead and so on in order to learn,
Mhm.
or does learning occur in a different way?
Okay. Okay.
And what I noticed with these tens of thousands of children is that whenever they went into the mind in order to figure out whatever was going on or how to achieve it, they all noticed that their brain got locked up. You
Okay.
know, they felt tongue tied, but really what was
Um,
going on is something locked up in the brain, and they couldn't even remember what the directions were or
Uh-huh.
certainly how to get through it. And so I developed ways of, um, well, first of all, I had to allow them to discover what actually occurred
Mhm.
when they were involved in this thing we've all been led to believe gives us the answers. It's called thinking,
Uh-huh. Right.
except it's really not thinking, it's worrying.
Uh-huh. Sure. Right.
And that is stressful.
Hmm.
And so, what I discovered from working with these thousands of kids is that every time they did that, they weren't able to achieve their goal.
Okay. Yeah.
But when that effort or process relaxed,
Hmm.
the answer they were looking for came by itself.
Interesting. Okay.
It came without looking for it.
Uh-huh.
And so I started to gather some insights about all this. And I took a body of work that I had experienced through a practitioner who has now passed away. And I started seeing it in a very different way than he saw it. And then when I shared that with these kids in the midst of an experience that they couldn't do with the mind,
Mhm.
all of a sudden they'd have these moments where the answer would come and they had no idea how.
Mhm. So you
And
took them out of the moment of the pressure somehow in order to allow them to relax, and then they realized they already knew the answer?
before you can put the mind aside and allow it to do whatever it does quietly in the background,
Yeah.
you have to discover what it actually does.
Okay.
Now, we have all kinds of theories about that. I mean, no one explained it to us, but when I was going through school, which was probably before you were born, you know, we were led to believe that humans were more evolved than all the other species because we had something called the mind
Mhm.
that could think.
Mhm.
And thinking sounded like a very um, intellectual process that was very complex and so on.
Mhm.
We all were conditioned to believe that and became habituated and eventually addicted to continually be interacting with this chatter
Mhm.
and believing that that's the way the answers would come.
Mhm.
Now, I not only spent years working with children, I then had the pleasure of working with top notch athletes,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
US Olympic team, pro golfers, pro tennis players, pro bowlers.
Mhm.
And I discovered that what they were looking for, which they call the zone or whatever,
Oh, right. Mhm.
was exactly what I'd help these kids um, discover
Huh?
that would transform them from being totally stressed out in the classroom and underachieving to achieving from a much more relaxed place and a much more trusting place
Mhm.
and having a whole different sense of self. In fact, I can remember, since we're talking about take off your glasses and see, which was released in 1995. Now,
Mhm.
I used to live in Miami, Florida,
Mhm.
but in 1995, I was living in Aspen, Colorado.
Okay. Yeah.
And when the book was released, I came to Miami as part of my book tour.
Mhm.
And I was sitting with a little table in front of me at a very highly respected bookstore on Miami Beach.
Mhm.
I had done a small talk and I was doing a book signing.
Mhm.
All of it, there's a whole line of people waiting for me to sign their books.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, I look up and there's this young man. I don't know, he's 6 foot something. And he says, Dr. Lieberman, do you remember me?
Mhm.
No. He said, I'm so and so's son. And all of a sudden, I remembered his mother who used to bring him in
Uh-huh.
for vision training.
Mhm.
And I smiled and he said, you remember you used to have me jumping up and down on the trampoline in your office, and you gave me those special glasses that helped me to read better.
Uh,
I said, yes, I do remember. I said, what are you doing these days? He says, I'm just about to start medical school.
that's fantastic. Very cool.
And I can't tell you how many of those kids that I had the pleasure of working with and learning from, their whole life opened up. In fact, I was taking a walk on Maui a day or two ago,
Mhm.
and I saw a couple, and they're my age. And I used to work with the family as well as their adult kids.
Mhm.
One of them was almost a pro level golfer who had lost his eyesight, and I helped him to regain that and optimize his game. And I'd worked with all of them in one way or the other. And Bill, the gentleman's name, is talking to me and he says, oh, and the greatest thing is all of our kids are so successful.
Mhm.
And I looked at him because I shared with him years ago not to worry,
Mhm.
they'll find their way. He said, yeah, you were right about that.
Mhm.
I said, we all find our way
Mhm.
and we all learn in a different way. And so I've seen this in my own life.
Mhm.
I was a kid who didn't enjoy reading. Reading put me to sleep.
Mhm.
And so I've read very little in my life.
Mhm.
I used to think that was a problem. Something was wrong with me.
Mhm.
But I learned through direct experience.
Okay.
And when I say direct experience, I don't mean everyday kind of experiences. We all learn from that.
Yeah.
A direct experience for me is an experience of unfiltered awareness.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Now, your show, um, the name of your show was the Christian something,
Natural health. Yeah.
Christian Natural Health.
Yeah.
I imagine that most, if not all, of your listeners had an experience they can't describe,
Mhm.
where all of a sudden they saw something clearly in a way they had never seen it.
Mhm.
It was beyond belief.
Mhm.
It was just absolutely something. Maybe you can call it a religious experience.
Mhm.
These words are more than just expressions, they mean something. And so a direct experience is a glimpse through the eyes of God.
Mhm.
It's a moment where all of a sudden something occurs and you've never seen anything like that. And so I'll give you an example, which was your original question.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to me in 1976? Well, when I went into college, and I mentioned before that I was not much of a reader, immediately I had a giant amount of reading, very complex reading. And I was just at university less than 2 weeks, and we had some sort of an examination. And in the middle of the test, I remember, because I always had amazingly excellent eyesight,
Mm-hmm.
I was writing an answer. I looked up at the blackboard, and the blackboard was blurry.
Ah, interesting.
And I felt almost like a cold sweat. I didn't know what happened, but I was scared. And they sent me to the infirmary, and the infirmary sent me to an ophthalmologist. The ophthalmologist checked my eyes. I had a prescription which was close to pure water. It
Mm-hmm.
was almost nothing, but
Yeah.
he prescribed glasses, and I didn't know any better. I put them on. And yes, I could see, but every 6 months or a year, my eyesight kept getting worse and worse and worse. And pretty much everyone that wears glasses notices that phenomenon. And
Uh-huh.
what came to me as I was going through my optometric training and my vision science training is,
Mm-hmm.
if a problem continues to get worse, the solution cannot possibly be the solution.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. Right.
And so I had a real interest in preventive vision care
Right.
from the very first day I went into practice, and even when I was in school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also very interested in seeing, could these conditions be reversed?
Right. Yeah.
Um, was there some regenerative process that could occur? And I don't like to share anything at the time with my patients unless it was something that I knew by heart,
Mm-hmm.
unless it was something that I had personally experienced.
Yeah.
Um, and um, and the reason for that is that as physicians, regardless of what type of physician we are, we've been led to believe that our techniques and our therapies, that's what we have to offer.
Mm-hmm.
There's very little value placed on us. And yet, our connection with each other might be the most potent aspect of whatever it is we share
Mm-hmm.
with our patients or anyone that we are inspired to support.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I started looking at all these kinds of things very, very early. I would say that most of my work in the early 70s was, you might call, mind body medicine, and eventually took me to a place that was beyond mind, uh, which we'll get into. But what happened to me was I was trying all kinds of things, going without my glasses, reducing my eyeglass prescriptions very gradually. And all these things had an effect, but it didn't get me past the goal
Mm-hmm.
line.
Yeah.
And at the time, because I was searching and experiencing so many interesting things, one of the things that I began doing in the early 70s was meditating.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I thought meditation was about quieting the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I soon realized that the mind would quiet temporarily, but would soon begin again. And what was of interest to me was not the 20 minutes I meditated, but the other 23 hours and 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a transfer into my everyday life?
Mm-hmm.
Now, these days, and for many years now, my life has been my meditation.
Mm-hmm.
That's where all of it is happening. And what I learned from meditating in those days is that I wasn't the mind.
Right.
Whatever was my essence was observing or witnessing this activity
Mm-hmm.
we call mind.
The chatter. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as my identification gradually moved from believing it's my mind, I can change my mind, and all these different expressions,
Mm-hmm.
to realizing that I was that which was witnessing
Mm-hmm.
from no point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really critical because from, and this is just my direct experience, everyone has to look at their own as their own guidance, but I was never aware of any talking by that witness. It merely was seeing. And my sense is that it saw way, way, way beyond anything that I had ever seen with my eyes or even imagined with the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so this particular Sunday, I went and I sat down and I took my glasses off, began meditating. And somewhere in the process, I was aware of everything in the room. I was literally seeing it, but my eyes were closed. And usually, with my eyes open and without my glasses, things were blurry.
Mm-hmm.
But my eyes were closed, glasses were not on, and I could see everything in the room, including myself, with a level of clarity that was scintillating.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just clear like I can read the eye chart.
Mm-hmm.
The space in between whatever was seeing and that which was being observed was like filled with little snowflakes. You
Oh,
know, it was almost as though whatever was seeing both on a physical and energetic level simultaneously.
mhm. And from as you're talking from a scriptural standpoint, what's occurring to me is that we are body, mind, spirit is what it
Right,
teaches. And so you're describing the perspective from spirit, which we don't have direct contact to through our bodies, but the
right.
mind is kind of a mediator. Interesting. Okay.
And we may actually be the spirit we think is outside of us.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We may actually uh, be an expression
Mm-hmm.
of that divinity.
Mm-hmm.
And aside from that particular experience, one of the things that impacted me in this meditative state is that I could not determine where the seeing was happening from.
That's fascinating. Hmm.
It felt holographic.
Yeah.
It felt as though the seeing was simultaneously occurring from all vantage points, which created um, which created a seeing without a point of view. It was all just seeing. When my eyes opened, everything was crystal clear.
For how
And
long?
it's been that way, and I'm 78 now.
Ever since. Wow.
And at first, it was like, oh my God, what happened here?
Mm-hmm.
And then quickly it was, oh my God, what the hell is wrong?
Uh-huh.
Because this is not supposed to happen. And
Right.
so, and at the time, my license said I needed glasses in order to see while driving.
Mm-hmm.
So I always had my glasses on, especially when I was driving and when I was in the office, because I needed to make sure that I could see what the patient was telling me to make sure that they were reading it accurately.
Mm-hmm.
I was so astonished that I drove myself to my office, but didn't put my glasses on because I didn't need them. They,
Mm-hmm.
but I had them on the seat next to me in case a cop pulled me over. I could
Right.
immediately put them on.
Sure.
But everything was clear: the license plates, the street signs, the billboards. I drove a half an hour to my office. I sat myself in my examination chair. Most eye doctors these days, in order to save money, rather than having a 25-foot room where the patient is 20 feet from the eye chart, which is called optical infinity,
Mm-hmm.
they compress everything into an 8-foot or 10-foot room, and it's literally all done with mirrors.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
the projector projects into a mirror, which is then reflected,
Oh, wow.
and you think you're getting accurate information,
Mm-hmm.
but the person knows that they're not seeing off into the distance, that they're just looking at something 8 or 9 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, I had a 25-foot exam room. My examination chair was exactly 20 feet away from the eye chart. I sat in my chair. At that time, I was also a researcher, and I had just received a new automated projector from American Optical Corporation, and it had hundreds of eye charts that I had never seen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I just start going through one and the next one and the next one and the next one. And each time I'm reading 300% better.
Wow.
I'm reading one line lower than 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, all I was able to see without my glasses was the big E at the top of the chart.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm seeing 300% better. I'm not stressing or straining or squinting or anything. Maybe my prescription has disappeared.
Uh-huh.
So I took my examination device, it's called a phoropter,
Mm-hmm.
and I put in a bunch of lenses that made everything blurry so I would have no idea what I was doing. I sat behind it, and then I just slowly changed the power, even though I didn't know exactly what the power was in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that examining myself in the same way as I examined my patients. I then realized why my patients were so confused when I said to them, is it better number one or number two?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, let me see it again, and so on, because we're constantly questioning ourselves
Mm-hmm.
through the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, when I finished and I thought I was going to come out from the device and it would show no prescription, because how else could I be
Right.
seeing clearly?
Yeah.
But in fact, the prescription that was in the device was almost identical to what was in my glasses.
Interesting.
And I sat there and I said, how is it possible for me to be reading 300% better, and yet the optical measurements of my eyes have not changed?
Mhm.
And then I remembered that expression, the eyes are the windows of the soul.
Yeah.
Maybe the eyes are not the mechanism of seeing, they're merely the transparent biological window
Hmm.
that goes into somewhere within us that has the ability to see. Now, I didn't know, and I spent the next 4 years in an ongoing experiment I called an experiment on the workings of my mind,
Hmm.
because at that time I was convinced it was mine.
Hmm.
And I thought, wow, if I could just figure out what that button is that I need
Yeah.
to press
Hmm.
to see what happened, I could then share that with the world.
Hmm.
And I looked and I looked and I looked, but I was looking for it in the mind.
So, yeah, the materialist perspective that everything exists in the body, essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
right. And it wasn't there.
Right.
I couldn't get any sense from that.
Hmm.
This process I mentioned before that I did with kids and with athletes, that allowed them to um, allowed them to experience effortless learning,
Hmm.
is probably precisely what happens when we're able to see effortlessly.
Hmm.
And I now realize it's exactly what happens when someone has a spiritual awakening.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we think we have to do things to
Yeah.
make that. So people say, well, what kind of meditation were you doing? No, doesn't have anything to do with any of that.
Hmm.
What do I have to do? Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And why do I say that?
Hmm.
So you're a physician, and you know that when both of us came out of our mother's womb, we were in a wet environment, if you will, that was warm and dark. Now we all of a sudden come out, and it's dry, it's cold, it's exceedingly bright. And whoever delivers us, I imagine, is first noticing, is the body doing this? Is the body expanding and contracting? We seem to limit that to the respiratory cycle,
Okay.
but that is going on in every single thing in the universe.
Hmm.
Everything is continually
Oh, I
expanding and
see.
contracting,
Right. Yeah.
including the earth, the
Hmm.
universe, everything in the body, the vascular system, and so on. And
Vibrations of
so
matter. Yeah.
this begins, the heart begins to pump
Hmm.
and adjust itself as it needs to continually. Our blood pressure, our hormonal release, every physiological function magically begins without us doing anything,
Hmm.
And it does that throughout our life until the final breath.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everything is being taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, we're conditioned to believe that we have to make it happen, that we have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've come to discover in relation to seeing, being, learning, and perhaps everything else is that life is living us.
Mm-hmm.
And everything is designed to function on its own. And anything we do in an attempt to make things happen
Mm-hmm.
is like putting a wrench in the works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
And so, as a naturopath, you do things that are supportive.
Mm-hmm.
They're they work along with,
Mm-hmm.
not in opposition
Yes,
to.
exactly.
And so all of these experiences that I had have brought me to a place. You said, well, how long did that clarity last?
Yeah.
I think it's in May of this year, it'll be 50 years.
It's amazing.
Now, if that lasted for 5 minutes, you'd say, oh my God, that's
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Right.
But I'm 78 years old. I'll
Mm.
be 79 in November. And I still see well without my glasses at distance and even reading.
So I'm wondering too, though, because as you were talking and describing the difficulty these children originally had with learning, it seemed as though your technique for helping them to learn effortlessly was to give them essentially what you call in your book open focus, this idea of,
It was a little
no,
different from that.
okay,
Let
okay,
me give
sure,
you an example.
okay.
I want you to imagine that there's a whiteboard
Mm-hmm.
near you, and there's a couple of rows of arrows, which I believe are also in
They are.
Take Off Your Glasses and See,
Mm-hmm.
and they're pointing in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask you to look at the chart as if you were reading,
Mm-hmm.
going left to right, and initially just call out the direction of the arrows.
Right.
Most people can do that, even though they start questioning themselves. And so, what I do with this technique is that I have them notice what's actually occurring inside.
Okay.
Everyone's concerned about getting the right answers.
Mm-hmm.
But what is obscured, which is really important, is what's going on inside in this mechanism we call mind.
Mm-hmm.
And is that supporting, or is that actually obstructing?
Okay.
And this technique, which begins simple, just call out the direction. Eventually, I have the person calling out the direction and moving their hands in the same direction. So it's right, left, up, down.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they get to a level where that is occurring easily,
Mm-hmm.
I say to them, would you like to try the next level?
Mm-hmm.
And they say, yeah, because when they do something good, just like kids, they say, can I do it again?
Yeah, right.
So now I say to them, okay, this is a little different. I want you to call out the direction of the arrow and simultaneously allow your hands to move in the opposite direction.
Hmm. Okay.
So it's right, left, up, down. Now, I don't do this technique, and I haven't in God knows when.
Right.
But if I had it in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
I could do that for you
Uh-huh.
without a thought. The system would just drop right in.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they can do that, then I say, okay, now move your hands in the direction and call out the opposite.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So when you try to think about doing this, it's
Right.
overwhelming.
Sure.
Why? Because you can't do it with the mind.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And so the thing you discover immediately is as soon as the mind tries to figure out how to do it,
Mm-hmm.
it scrambles everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it only figures it out if it does for one or two arrows, and then boom, everything falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I began to notice is that when we start worrying, because that's most of what we call thinking, because it
Yeah.
sounds intellectual, but
True.
it's worrying.
Yeah.
The moment that begins, which has to do with efforting, we interfere with that fundamental cycle that everyone that brings a child into this world notices. This expansion and contraction, which we call breathing, I called um, the heartbeat of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
It is a movement which is entrained into all things. It's almost like a frequency of wellness. And so what I started noticing is here we're trained to believe that thinking is going to allow us to be successful at life. And yet, when we start doing it, the breathing cycle constricts, and either the breath is held or the person becomes a clavicular breather where they're breathing in the upper chest only.
Right.
And I said, anything that interferes with that fundamental rhythm can't possibly be the way our system is designed to function. And so that was a very early observation on my part. And so when I shared that with someone, it wasn't for them to make a corrective movement
Mm-hmm.
because the changes we experience are not so much about what we do. It's primarily by what we are aware of. It is awareness that is curative.
Okay.
And so everything is about beginning to see not so much the outside, but what's happening inside that is preceding what happens in the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of these little exercises, which were fun and also challenging, I would introduce very gradually, each time building the capacity of the person to do something in a way that was easy and successful for them.
So you were building confidence.
Well, what I built, what I did was provide an experience that allowed them to realize that everything was working okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The confidence was just there. It was obscured
Mm-hmm.
because it didn't fit in what we thought was supposed to happen.
Huh.
And so we kept building on this, and they began to notice that the breathing stopped whenever they thought. And whenever they thought, They lost their place. They forgot the instructions. They couldn't figure it out. And they got the wrong answer. Now, the answer was least important to me.
Yeah.
What was important was the process, beginning to notice what's going on and then allow that noticing to begin to rewire our awareness. And many years ago in the 80s, I was doing a talk at some sort of a national conference in Washington, D.C., and I was sharing about my discoveries about light and utilizing color in a therapeutic way. And when the talk finished, we opened up the Q&A, and there was a lady in the audience that raised her hand and was telling me she had never heard anyone talk about light, much less in this particular way.
Yeah.
And she was very interested because she was a scientist and researcher that was very much involved in the field of psychoneuroimmunology. And so I said, can you share more about your work? It sounds fascinating. And she says, well, my team and I have sort of discovered that every state of mind is mirrored in our biology.
Yeah.
That the things that we believe and are identified with are strongly mirrored in our biology. And what comes out of my mouth is, what happens if you don't have a point of view? And she sort of, her head goes back and she says, I never considered that. Is that possible? I said, absolutely. And that conversation began a multi-year friendship with this woman whose name was Candace Pert.
Oh, yeah. I've read her books.
Yeah, Candace has passed away now.
Oh, yeah.
But she visited me in Aspen. I visited her on the East Coast. We had marvelous conversations about everything from different ways of seeing to energetic healing, all kinds of profound conversations. The point I'm making is that the mind naturally has a point of view.
Right. Yeah.
It's part of what we call duality. This witnessing something, I was going to say within us, but I don't know where it is. From my direct experience, it has no point of view. It doesn't want this versus this. It doesn't see in that way whatsoever. And I realize that I had a very short period of time in 1976 where I had an experience of no point of view. And that experience was occurring initially with my eyes closed, but then transferred into my everyday experience.
And that's what I find so fascinating, because what it seems like you're describing, point of view versus view, what you talk about in the book is this concept that the glasses are narrowing, narrowing, narrowing to this one crystal clear point. And if you're just looking through that point, you're missing everything that's going around in the periphery. And that, like, from a physical standpoint, you're then closing yourself off and narrowing your world. And then you're creating an analogy to the way that we internally view the world as how that can translate. So, from what you were talking about, it sounded to me like the reason why you opened your eyes and everything was clear was because you let go of that inner tension and you expanded. But what I would have expected for most people is that when you sat for an exam or there was a major stressor in life, it would come back, but it never did. That's what I find so strange for you.
So we often use that expression, you let go. I'm coming to that because then people will say, well, how did you let go?
Right. Yeah.
I didn't,
Don't know.
I wasn't aware
Sure. Yeah.
of voluntarily doing anything. In
Yeah.
fact, I don't think there is any part of our physiology that is designed to initiate action.
Mm-hmm.
I think everything physiologically is continually responding to something, it's
Mm-hmm.
accommodating to something. And that something maybe is the animating force of life, whatever that is,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that is moving the planets around the sun, rotating the earth, changing the seasons,
Mm-hmm.
all those things we have theories about, but don't actually understand.
Yeah.
And perhaps the spiritualist has a deeper knowing, I won't say understanding. Why? When we think of science, we think of the scientific method using a microscope, a telescope, a gold standard, an evidence based study, whatever it is, to prove something. Well, the reason it's called a theory is because it's always changing.
Mm-hmm.
If it's always changing, it's a temporary belief. It's not truth.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Truth and belief actually mean the opposite of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I'm interested in is truth beyond opinion.
Yeah.
I'm interested in something that isn't changing,
Mm-hmm.
that is always there. And you mentioned something about what glasses typically do
Mm-hmm.
is they they well, glasses are sort of like a dress or a pair of pants. When I go shopping for a pair of jeans, I have to find a pair of jeans that fits me,
Mm-hmm.
whether I am smaller than anticipated,
Mm-hmm.
larger than anticipated, or somewhere right in what we call average. I have to find a pair of pants that fits me. I don't want them too big and I don't want them too small. I want them just right.
Yeah.
When you walk into the eye doctor's office and they say, "What's the problem?" And you said, "I'm having some difficulty seeing," all their measurements are actually measuring the size, the fit
Yeah.
of those glasses for you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't correct anything.
Mm-hmm.
They merely um, compress
Yeah.
the field of perception
To what?
so that it fits
Mm-hmm.
to what your system has already done. The
Mm-hmm.
question is, why has our system done that?
Right. Yeah.
And part of the reason on a physical level is we spend most of our life indoors. And at some point, somebody said learning occurs by reading.
Mm-hmm.
Now, earlier in times, people learned by being involved in life, by living.
Yeah, that too.
You learned about what foods resonated with you
Mm-hmm.
because your body naturally moved to those.
Mm-hmm.
You learned if it didn't resonate because maybe it didn't digest properly.
Mm-hmm.
You began to see that it was natural to be outside in sunshine
Mm-hmm.
and to sleep at night. Um, People didn't go to sleep when the TV show was
Right.
finished at midnight. They went to sleep when it got dark.
Went down. Sure. Right.
Everything was according to Mother Nature, or what you call natural.
Mm-hmm.
Today, almost everything we do is called normal,
Mm-hmm.
which is not natural most of the time.
Very true. Yeah.
And so you mentioned the glasses compressing the world. Well, we spend our days sitting in front of a monitor
Mm-hmm.
at close distance.
Mm-hmm.
And and then we accentuate it by decreasing the size of the monitor
Right.
to the size of a cell phone. And
Mm-hmm.
to give you an idea of how impactful that is, the average person has their cell phone close by about 21 and a half to 22 and a half hours a day.
That's nuts.
Much of the time they're looking at it, or it's sitting on their bed to wake them up, and so on, because their rhythms are so out of sync
Yeah.
with Mother Nature.
Mm-hmm.
And understand, and you know this as a practitioner, there's a lot of discussion these days about circadian rhythms.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Our physiology is literally continually informed
Mm-hmm.
and invited to do whatever it has to do and to what degree it needs to be done according to what's going on in the environment, the time of the day, the time of the night, the spectral characteristics. And so the wellness of a plant, animal, or human being
Mm-hmm.
is all related to how aligned their system is with the natural rhythms
Mm-hmm.
of day, night, and whatever's going on in between.
Right. Yeah.
When we get out of sync because we spend most of our hours indoors and we don't get sunlight,
Right.
all of a sudden our body starts losing a sense of that which is guiding it,
Mm-hmm.
which are the changes in light in the environment, is probably the most profound
Mm-hmm.
aspect.
Yeah.
And then, there's a reason we have two eyes
Mm-hmm.
rather than one in the middle of our forehead. We have two eyes because each one has a slightly different angle at which it is seeing. And
Mm-hmm.
so when those slightly disparate perceptions are fused together, something magical occurs.
Mm-hmm.
It's called stereoscopic vision, depth perception. Now, Depth perception is not just the ability for me to notice that my monitor is closer to me than the window behind my monitor.
Mhm.
That's one aspect. The other aspect of stereoscopic vision is that it allows you to see deeply into things
Mhm.
more than just the surface.
Mhm. Okay.
And so, as vision begins to develop or evolve, the ability to see heightens at a level that is profound.
Mhm.
It's not just seeing, it's your whole system begins to get rewired. Uh, when we think of neuroplasticity, people think, oh, yeah, you do that by playing the piano an hour a day.
Mhm.
Yes, repetition can change the wiring of your brain. However, if repetition is required to change the wiring, then repetition is required to maintain that wiring.
Right.
And so you stop going to the gym, and all of a sudden your biceps are smaller.
Mhm.
I like the kind of change that doesn't require doing.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
and so what I've discovered is that the most potent neuroplastic changes are epiphanies,
Yeah, I can see that.
because an epiphany is not I think,
Right.
it's a knowing, even though we don't know who the knower is. But
Hmm.
there's just something is clear. Once you have directly experienced something, you never need to be convinced about it again.
Yeah.
You know it by heart. When
Hmm.
I was in fifth grade, Mrs. Williams told us your first impression is always correct. Now, she didn't say sometimes, she said always. And then later in the year, she said, oh, Jackie knows it by heart.
Hmm.
And I thought that meant Jackie had it memorized.
Right.
Has nothing to do with memorization.
Hmm.
Knowing it by heart is when you begin to trust that very first impression. So let's get a little closer to the heart now, and let's talk about what the real seeing mechanism is
Hmm.
and how it is that that letting go process that you mentioned might occur from the eyeglasses that compress to something
That
that infinitely expands.
hmm
So we use the word intuition often.
Yeah.
Oh, it came from my belly brain. It was a feeling.
Hmm.
Intuition is something way beyond a feeling.
Hmm.
We call it a feeling because we don't know the origin. And when we don't know the origin, we were told you're just guessing.
Hmm.
Um, it's profound how accurate that guessing is, because it's not guessing at all. In my study of the eye, I was intrigued by the fact that the retina has about 135 to 140 million cells that are photosensitive. They are sensitive to light and respond to light. Most of the time, we hear about two types of cells: the rods, which are active at night under low light levels, and the cones that are active during the day. The rods are spread throughout the entire retina.
Hmm.
The cones are compressed like sardines in a can in a little tiny area called the macula.
Hmm.
And so you hear about people getting macular degeneration,
Yeah.
and everybody says, well, it's because of too much sun or this or that. My sense is that macular degeneration is the response of overworking the wrong part of the eye.
Okay.
So I'll share about that and it'll become clearer.
Okay.
The macular area is the area that when the doctor says, is it better one or two, which is what most of the exam is just checking the part of the eye that discerns one thing from another. You might call that the mind's eye. That's the part that makes a judgment about life. This is better than this. I like this. I don't like this. The macular, the cones in the macula can perceive color and they can discern detail. They probably, that composes about 5% of all the cells in the eye. 95% are called rods. Rods, we think of them as something active at night, but we don't give them a whole lot of credit. So let's talk about those because those are really amazing. First thing that hit me is if the eye has 95% rods and only 5% cones, I would imagine we are designed to primarily function with the rods,
right,
and only use the cones when required. So, as an example, an animal in the wild senses something. That sensing occurs with the rods. They only open their eyes and look when they feel they might be in danger,
right,
and need to discern, is it just another deer or is it a cobra?
right. Yeah.
But other than that quick check to make sure I'm totally safe, other than that, that part of the eye doesn't need to be used much. However, if you're trained that you learn by reading and you spend your days working at a computer, you end up just using the cones all the time.
Right.
And you probably exhaust them.
Yeah.
Because we're not designed for that to happen.
Right.
Now, to give you an example, the state of Alaska, before it became a state, many of the Inuit tribes there and so on, they lived outdoors. They weren't reading. And when their eyes were examined, you didn't see any nearsightedness at all. It didn't exist. And then they became a state and school became mandatory. And that meant reading.
Right.
And within a year of that, a huge percentage of the kids were nearsighted.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so what we've seen after many years is that compressing the field of vision to a small area, like a monitor, a book, a cell phone, for a period of time causes the mechanisms in our vision to adjust to that function.
Right.
And that in combination with a a deficit in sunlight is what causes the epidemic of nearsightedness, which is huge. It's the biggest health epidemic in the world, is decreasing vision. So let's come back to the rods a second. As a scientist and a physician, I'm sure you have probably spent some time looking at some of the incredible discoveries of quantum mechanics. And in quantum mechanics, when they look at, the smallest energetic, non-physical somethings from where life originates, they speak of light. Light is the energy from where life emerges. Maybe that's why the Bible says God is light. And the rods, interestingly enough, have the ability to detect and respond to a single photon.
Wow.
Now, that's beyond wow. That's unheard of. There is no technology that humans have created that can do that.
Yeah.
So we have this very unique ability, and it's probably present in other creatures as well, to see the invisible. Because a photon is a non-physical entity. You cannot describe it. It's an interesting entity. It is connected to every other entity that exists. If you took two photons and you sent them in opposite directions to the edges of the universe, and then you tickled one of them, both of them would simultaneously laugh.
Entanglement. Yes.
Exactly. But to say that a part of our physiology is designed to see the energetic foundation of reality before it has become form is profound. Why? It provides us that first impression that is always correct. It is the inner GPS that immediately, without any logic, without any thought, without any work, it guides us. Why do we need such a thing? Or why other creatures have that as well? Is because that is inseparable from our survival. Our survival is based on seeing without looking, knowing without thinking. And so we began this conversation about my eyesight that changed, or that your listeners may have an interest in something to do with that. For me, what I'm really excited about is sharing what I've learned about this function called mind. Not that it's anything negative. It serves a role, and it does that by itself. We don't need to do all the things we were trained to do. I think means I don't know.
Sure.
And so it's very important to have discussions about this. The the words and the chatter we hear inside are probably originating from Broca's area of the left hemisphere, which is the language center of the brain. Why do we have language? Probably sometime in our evolution, our way of communicating with each other changed. And so we began to develop language, probably in the same way as we don't understand why a bird sings, but that's probably its way of communicating. And communication is valuable, but it has nothing to do with the direct experience. If you come to Maui and we go to one of my favorite restaurants called Marlowe, and you want to eat something that you probably don't want to eat too often, but it's so damn good that you say, Jacob, let's share a pizza. Now you look at the menu and it says pizza, and you know what a pizza is because you read the word pizza. But the word pizza doesn't have anything to do with what happens when you bite into this pizza. They have nothing to do with each other, and yet we treat life as though words are the same thing as what they're attempting to describe, and they have nothing to do with it. And what's happening is the movement is continually away from the direct experience and into some way of communicating. I remember I was doing a talk somewhere, and someone asked me about that vision experience in 76. And as I began to share it, somebody in the audience says, "Oh, yeah, you had an out of body experience." They assumed that the term out of body experience could in some way describe something that was not describable. And so all of this conversation is about bringing us back to the direct experience, the unfiltered awareness. I was recently at a dear friend's 70th birthday party, and they are a therapist, and so many people there were therapists. Some of them were best-selling authors. They were renowned, and one of the terms that I heard, let me see if I can remember it just 1 second. Was mindfulness. And so I found myself in conversation with a few people who were considered experts at this and taught this work that they called mindfulness. And I said, my sense is that what you're talking about is mindlessness. And a couple of them said, "Oh my God, you're absolutely correct."
Right. Yeah.
I said, "But you understand that when we call it mindfulness, you're telling a person in New York that if they want to drive to San Francisco, they need to get in their car and drive east. The word you think is describing something that it's not describing."
Right.
I said, "My sense is you're speaking about unfiltered awareness, which is something that occurs that is very different than something to do with mind. And so I think it's coming back to using our common sense. Why do we call it common sense? Because it's common to all living things.
Right. Yeah.
What is common to all living things? An ability to see and to know instantaneously, because your survival depends upon it. And so we need to come back to realizing that while there's great value in the traditional scientific method, there is equal value into the science of the mystic. The mystic does not gain insight by doing a gold standard study that we say is evidence-based. They learn from direct experience. When you look at, whether it's acupuncture, Ayurvedic medicine, naturopathy, all these amazing aspects, scientific methods, if you will, we learn through direct experience.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And so much of our science, which we rely on today and is valuable, attempts to prove something about human beings without human involvement. We want to exclude every part of it that occurs in our everyday life. And yet, what creates an impact is everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And I'll share with you this final piece about what excites me in my everyday life, because I feel like I do my best work out on the streets. I go to a coffee shop, maybe to get an oat milk latte in the afternoon. And as I sit there, I notice what catches my eye. Why? Because what catches my eye is looking for me. It's just very different than what we've been taught, that we are the ones looking and seeing. And so you mentioned something about seeing the small piece but missing the big piece. We're so focused on looking for what we think is occurring or what we would like to occur that we miss everything we're not looking for.
Yeah, makes sense.
And those are the miracles.
Sure.
Those are the unexpected things that surprise us, and we say, oh my God. And we start scribbling on a napkin, in the middle of a restaurant, because all of a sudden this huge download comes. Of course, in the next day, we've been trained to say, let me tell you what I thought of.
Right.
No, 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 no. We didn't come up with it. We merely notice what came to us.
Right.
And the reason it comes to us is because that's the next step in our life's journey.
Yeah.
And so this whole piece about seeing and how it works, it's very beautiful. It's connected with everything. And just speaking about this and allowing some of these things to traverse our awareness can often shift something in a way that we can't do by doing. In fact, this morning, my daughter and I have been working on a new book, which is a memoir. And she was looking at something on my website. And she said, "Do you still want me to keep this little quote, this little testimonial?" And I looked at it, and it said, "After listening to you speak, I stopped wearing my glasses and I've never put them on again. And I see really well." Now, we think we have to do something, but when words don't come from us, but it's a message traversing through us, that message has medicinal value and can create a profound impact. So I hope we've touched upon some of the things that you wanted to hear.
Absolutely. Where can people go who want to learn more about you and your work?
They can go to our website, which is jacobliberman.org, O-R-G, and Liberman is spelled L-I-B as in boy, E-R-M-A-N, and means man of love.
Oh, excellent.
So they can find me there. They can Google my name. They can go to Instagram, and my work is not about marketing.
Yeah.
I have no interest in that.
Yeah.
If I can make a little imprint in someone's life that is meaningful, that fills me with joy.
Awesome.
So that's what my interest in is. And most of my work these days is not in the eye doctoring field. It's in having beautiful conversation like this, incorporating some of the discoveries I've made about light and color, which we should get into at another conversation. I think you would be fascinated by it.
Yeah.
It helps to desensitize a lot of the emotional triggers that catalyze what we call stress. But anyway, my work is really, if I can, to in some way support someone in our uncovering their true essence and realizing that there's nothing wrong with them.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jacob. This has been great.
Lauren, it is a pleasure to meet you. I think you probably heal people just with your smile, and that's magnificent. And since I'm still a kid at 78, can we do this again?
Absolutely.
Good. I'm grateful for your invitation. I hope that whatever was filtering through today touched the hearts of your listeners and took their own sense of what's happening in life and confirmed it.
Excellent. Thank you so much.